applying Sun Tzu's The Art of War to modern military conflicts. By the time April 1814 rolled around, Napoleon Bonaparte had already established a massive empire through military conquest and had dominated the majority of Europe for a decade. Following his defeat at the hands of a European coalition, Charles abdicated his throne and was banished to Elba. It was Louis XVIII who brought back the Bourbon monarchy in France. On the other hand, Napoleon was aware of the fact that the monarchy and its wealthy supporters were not well received in France and were connected to the corruption that had sparked the French Revolution 1/4 of a century earlier. There was a possibility that Napoleon would return due to the fact that his opponents at the Congress of Vienna were divided on the fate of Europe. During the first 10 months of his exile, Napoleon made his way back to France. In contrast, a large number of French residents and the soldiers who were tasked with apprehending him were in favor of him instead. As a measure of retaliation, his erstwhile adversaries, the coalition, put aside their disagreements, declared Napoleon to be a notorious criminal, and made preparations for war. Napoleon understood that he needed to take prompt action in order to prevent the coalition from conquering France. In order to negotiate peace from a position of strength, he desired to defeat each army individually. His initial goals in Belgium were the Anglo-Allied army led by the Duke of Wellington and the Prussian army led by Prince Blücher. It is possible for Napoleon to destroy both armies on his own, but if they were to combine their forces, he would be outnumbered. His objective was to subdue each of them on an individual basis and prevent them from working together. With the intention of dividing the army, he crossed the border at Charleroi. The following day, Napoleon dispatched Marshal Ney's left wing to successfully capture the crucial crossroads near Quatre Bras. While the British-led Allied forces led by the Duke of Wellington continue to assemble, Ney engages in combat with them. The Allies continued to retain their ground in spite of the French attacks. Ligny is the location where Napoleon simultaneously targets the Prussian force led by Prince Blush. It is a brutal struggle, but the French emerge victorious. In spite of the fact that his horse is shot, the 72-year-old Blücher leads a cavalry assault and narrowly avoids being captured. Even though they are retreating, the Prussian army is not vanquished. As Napoleon concentrates his attention on Wellington's army, he gives the order to Marshal Grouchy's right wing to pursue the Prussians who are withdrawing. The following morning, Wellington is informed of the passing of Blücher. After receiving the news, he gives the order to retire to Waterloo, which is located south of Brussels. On the day that Blücher warns Wellington that Prussian troops will arrive the following day, Wellington continues to hold his place and prepare for fight. Wellington is wise in his selection of battlegrounds. Because of the gentle mountain that is located behind his men, French artillery is heavily obstructed. Hougoumont, La Haye-Sainte, and Papelotte are all places where he is anchored by elite guys. In spite of these advantages, Wellington's forces were comprised of inexperienced men from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Germany who had never engaged in combat before. They are forced to engage in combat with Napoleon's seasoned veterans until the arrival of Blücher's Prussians, or else they risk losing the battle and maybe the war. As the fight dawn approaches, Napoleon gives Marshal Grouchy the command to pursue the Prussians in an effort to prevent them from joining Wellington's army. During this time, Napoleon is making preparations to defeat Wellington at Waterloo and then travel to Brussels via train. At the same time that the main Prussian army is on its way to assist Wellington, Grouchy is captured and forced to face the Prussian rearguard at Wavre. In order to increase the movement of his troops, Napoleon waits for the ground to dry out before launching an invasion of Waterloo. During the course of the conflict, this delay causes him to lose valuable time. At approximately 11 in the morning, Napoleon launches a feint from Wellington's right flank in the direction of Hougoumont, a fortified farmhouse which marks the beginning of the Battle of Waterloo. It is his intention to lure Wellington's reserves into this sector in order to divert their attention away from the center, which is where he intends to launch the primary assault. On the other hand, The German and British forces were stationed in Hougoumont throughout the entire day. Once they have forced their way into the main gate, which closes behind them, the French are now unable to escape the establishment. Later on, Wellington refers to this moment as the turning point of the battle, when the intruders are killed. The main Allied position is the target of 80 French cannons fired by Napoleon at approximately noon. Some of Wellington's cannonballs hit their aim, hurting and decimating the Allies, despite the fact that the majority of Wellington's men are concealed behind a headgear. At 1:30 p.m., Napoleon gives the order for his troops to march in columns. With a synchronized musket bombardment and a huge cavalry assault, the British successfully launched a counterattack against the French. As Napoleon's infantry manages to evade the furious attack from the cavalry, the French offensive begins to slow down. French soldiers, including 2 eagle banners, which represent their honor, are either slain or captured throughout the conflict. Following their victory, the British cavalry overextends itself and charges too deeply into the enemy lines. It is because of their exhaustion and dispersion that they are susceptible to counterattacks by French cavalry. The commander of the Union Brigade, Major General Sir William Ponsonby, is one of the many British soldiers who have been killed or injured as a result of this counterattack. When it is 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Marshal Ney orders a tremendous cavalry attack to burst through the lines of the Allies because he believes they are leaving. As a result of the Allies being in hollow squares with fixed bayonets and not running, Hitler makes an error in his calculations. Following the failure of the French cavalry to break through these formidable formations, the French cavalry retreated and suffered significant casualties. This charge was not supported by either artillery or soldiers, which was a mistake on Ney's part. During this time, the Prussian army led by Blücher captured Plancenoit. Due to the risk, Napoleon is required to dispatch reserves in order to retake his flank. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, French forces take control of the La Haye-Saint farmhouse, which enables them to fire artillery at close range on densely populated regions held by the Allies. The British suffer further casualties as the shelling generates mayhem. It is possible that Wellington's force will be besieged if they do not flee. Additionally, Napoleon is in a precarious condition. The number of his soldiers is decreasing, while the number of Prussians is growing. At the same time that his supplies are running low, Napoleon enlists the most feared soldiers in Europe, the Imperial Guard, in order to exert some influence over the outcome.